You're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour on the Vets on Media Network.
Good morning, Arizona, and welcome to our listeners from around the globe and all you screaming Purple Eagle fans. This is Joe Brett.
And David Lucier.
And this is the Veterans Heritage Hour. We have a Hall of Fame guest for you today. And before we introduce him, I just want to thank David, who was in the Veterans Hall of Fame here in Arizona. That organization put on a wonderful gala last Saturday in which they honored 3 of our Veterans Heritage Project students, and it was a wonderful ceremony, David.
It was. It was well over 300 people, people from the Hall of Fame, people from non-veterans community. We had students there, all of them being honored for their contribution to the veterans community.
And for all of you who are listening, David and I are on the board of the Veterans Heritage Project, and it's an educational enrichment program for young scholars, our students, our high school students. It was started 11 years ago by Barbara Hatch, who was a Peace Corps volunteer, who used veterans to help teach her world history class. It evolved into students interviewing veterans, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program for both students and veterans. And our kids go on to great educations, and our veterans get to keep a book with their story in it.
Which is then archived in the Library of Congress.
Exactly. And so we're so proud of that, and we're so happy to have received the recognition and funding and support from the Arizona Veterans Hall of Fame. So thank you, David, and all your colleagues there.
Thank you.
Now moving over to a real Hall of Fame coach, the man who put the purple in the Purple Eagles, Coach Frank Layden. Welcome to our show, Coach.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and congratulations, David.
Thank you.
Earned.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
This is our March Madness show, and we have an ambassador for basketball and for life its own self, as Dan Jenkins might say. And Frank Layden started off in Brooklyn, New York, an all-star, an all-league, I guess, basketball and baseball player.
Well, I was very fortunate. I was brought up by a single parent. My mom died when I was born.
Sure.
In my childbirth. I had 2 older sisters, and my father worked on the docks. And so, you always hear about people saying, well, you got to have a good home environment, whatever. I did have it. My father provided me with all the things I needed, whether it was school books or certainly good clothes and good food and what have you. But I didn't see much of him because he worked all the time.
Sure.
He was a union man working on the docks. And so, he'd get off at 1 o'clock on Saturday. He worked 5.5 days. And on Sunday, we'd go to Ebbets Field or something like that. Sports was very important to us. But I was very fortunate to have good neighbors who looked out after you. And, there was respect, too. You never come home and say, oh, the teacher said this, or, the cop said this to me. You just never mention those things. But I was very fortunate to have wonderful coaches. And I remember my high school coach, Mr. Torregrossa, and I still call him Mr., and it's Mr. Torregrossa. He was the first one who said to me, you enjoy sports, work at it. I don't know if you'll be able to make a living at it, he said, but it's going to serve you well. And so, I remember Mr. Torregrossa working on shooting and baskets and things like that. He was a teacher, and on the side helped us out with little athletic endeavors. And then my high school coach, Mr. Drucker, he was one who said that, someday if you take care of your grades and you work hard at your game, who knows, you may be playing in Madison Square Garden and you have a chance to get a scholarship to college and what have you. And my college was unusual because, that had never come up. I never thought about going to college. My father, I used to kid in my senior year, my father wanted me to follow in his father's footsteps. Great profession he had brought with him from Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
And it took me all summer of my senior year to convince him that Brooklyn didn't need shepherds, so. But Mr. Drucker, and then, of course, going to Niagara eventually, was Mr. Gallagher, Coach Taps Gallagher, who was a wonderful man, a veteran, a commander in the Navy
I never knew that.
during World War II, a good friend of Johnny Wooden's, who also was a commander in the Navy.
Coach Wooden.
Yes.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And so, all those guys,
I never knew that
was
about
their
Johnny.
age,
Yeah.
during the, and so.
And they were World War II veterans?
World War II veterans,
Yeah.
and sports played a big part in World War II also, they had great teams,
Sure.
different bases and stuff like that,
Morale boosters.
morale boosters, and athletes were held in great esteem then, just as they are today. And so anyway, those men really set the foundation for what was to be the rest of my life.
And you led the league in home runs in baseball and scoring in basketball. Is that right?
in high school, yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
You wanted to, and you're here in spring for. We're happy to have the coach
I
with us.
love
He's here for
baseball.
spring training.
Baseball. I love baseball. Baseball is a thinking man's
Yeah.
game, and you can kibitz,
Yeah.
It's a long afternoon, so you can fool around and
Gives you a
and
chance
what-
to
yeah, yeah.
converse over the campfire.
Yeah, you can get up and leave and come back and nothing's changed. You go to the bathroom, you get a hot dog, whatever it is. But baseball is a wonderful game, and my wife loved. Right field in Ebbets Field, the right field street behind the right field wall was Bedford Avenue. And Red Bobby used to say, he hit one into Bedford Avenue, and the kids would wait out there hoping that a ball would be hit over in batting practice or during a game. And my wife, Barbara, lived on Bedford Avenue.
No, Barbara's in the studio with
Yeah,
us.
she's here with us. And her and her mother, she had a single parent also. She was brought up by her mother. Her father was a fireman who died early in life. And anyway, she used to go up there to Ebbets Field with her mother to see everybody. I mean, it was like a religion.
Sure.
I can remember Sundays we go to mass and then Ebbets Field. I mean, you take care of business. In fact, one of the things I'm very proud of is that I was at Jackie Robinson's first game.
Oh,
yeah. So history made,
That's something.
Yep, at Ebbets Field. And so that was the start of it all. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that there were mentors that were out there who were interested in me as a person and had a lot to do with whatever successes I've had. Yeah.
And you've carried that on in coaching in your career.
Well, I
Being
always
a mentor.
I always felt this way. I started out, I was a high school coach for 10 years, and I taught history, and I had homeroom duty and bus duty and all those things that teachers do, as well as coach. And I coached basketball, baseball, and football. I was assistant in football and baseball, but I was JV baseball and football coach, but I did have the varsity in basketball. And I always felt that the gymnasium could be the most valuable classroom in the school if used properly. Because what other class do people try out to be in? They got to take math, they got to take history, but basketball, you select them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they have to be special. So with that goes a certain responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I used to start off in the tryouts with every kid, and this was the Beatles time, the coming in with the long hair, and what I had was crew cut or B cut. Every kid that tried out had to have a crew cut. All right. So I had a mother come to me once and say, "Oh, my son has long hair and we don't want him to cut it." I said, "Good, let him play for your team." I mean, if your team is okay, we'll have a game with you at the end of the year. The long hairs against the short hairs. And so what happened was it starts finding out how bad the kid wants to play.
Yeah.
These kids want to play bad enough that they're gonna shave their heads for you.
Sure.
It's no big deal. I mean, I could have gone the other way and said, "Got to have long hair," But anyway, there has to be some discipline, and then once you've got their hearts and souls and their minds, all right, and they want to play so bad, you can use it to make them do better in school. I used to have a contract that the parents had to sign that what the kid would eat, when he would go to bed. I couldn't go home with every kid, in college you can check up on a little better in the dorms, but I made sure that the kids got something out of playing sports, not just getting. Very few of them get scholarships, and even fewer become professionals.
Sure.
Though we have a lot of kids, especially in the minorities, who lay a lot on the line thinking they're going to become the next Michael Jordan. Well, it's not easy. There's only 350 jobs in the NBA. I mean, you'd have a much better chance of becoming a lawyer or a doctor or a brain surgeon or something than you are becoming an NBA player. And it's there for you. So what I tried to do was, use it to, and that Niagara, I know sometimes maybe the players didn't like it and what have you, but we graduated our students. They got in and they got out. They got a degree, and it's an accomplishment to them. And some of them have gone on to do very well in life. In the pros, we did a couple of other things that were interesting. We started chapel service. So once a week we would have chapel. We invite the other team to come and join us in chapel. Some of the other coaches thought it was some kind of an undermining of their toughness or something. But we had 2 chaplain in Salt Lake, and we had these fellas on Saturday nights. We have a little chapel service, and we'd invite the wives to come, because a lot of these guys, after they get out of college and they leave their home, all right, they forget their religion or religious obligations. So we reminded them a little bit. Someone said to me, well, why do you say a prayer? I used to say a prayer in the locker room before we went out. And they said, does it help? I said, it don't hurt. It's like the Jewish mother said about the chicken soup, I don't know if it helped, but it don't hurt, So I said, I want everybody on my side. I know God's busy, but what the heck? Why shouldn't I get in there? It helps Notre Dame, let's face it. So anyway, we had that. Then we had book clubs. We gave out books, and then we would discuss the books. It used to kill me to see our players. We would visit the best cities in the world, and they would go to their room and lock themselves in and never do anything. So we went to Washington. I hired a bus and took the team on a tour. Let them see this wonderful city and the monuments and everything else, And the only obligation they ever had to their country was they paid taxes. And they paid a lot, but still, they should look up and especially, the African-American kids look and see Abraham Lincoln up there,
Sure.
Looking at them and looking down at them. So we did those things, visited I made arrangements for them to visit the White House, go to the FBI
Sure.
training place and then, so we do that, go to plays. I went to New York once and we saw a Chorus Line. Very big popular play, it was hot at the time. So I took the team there. I'm coming out and I got a kid from Brooklyn, of all places, and he says to me, Coach, that was great. Can we go again tomorrow? So I said, no, we can go. We get a chance. We'll go see a different play though. He goes, there's more? He goes, how long has this been going on? So I said, I don't know, about 1,000 years, I guess. This kid lived in Brooklyn, had never been to a play. He didn't know where Broadway was, so, and then a bonus. I gave a bonus to kids who finished college. A lot of these guys, you hear about 1 and out, and I'm not going to get, I'm not going to get into the, whether it's right or wrong
Sure.
or whatever, I think everybody, if they go to college, there's more than just playing sports, and they're attaining their goal. Most kids go so they make a good living for themselves. But there's more to school than that. The social end of it, the commitment, and really a feeling of satisfaction that I've accomplished something in my life. It was wonderful to see Adrian Dantley, a great player. I went to DeMatha High School and then went to Notre Dame, and he left a year early. He was drafted very high, and he made a lot of money and what have you. But he went back and got his degree. That was wonderful. So, those kind of things were
Then you had a bonus program with
we tried
jazz.
we had a bonus program to make the players think about it. I had one player come to me and say, oh, gee, that's chump change. I don't know, it's $10,000 or something like that. So I said, well, your mother didn't think so. I gave it to her. So anyway, but the other thing is through the career, or whether it's sports or it's academics or it's the service, you should have fun.
Sure.
Now you're a veteran.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about how you got started and what you did in the service, and then how it affected some of the decisions and the things that you did later.
Yeah. Let me I'll make one comment about that. If you picked out, we voted who the best professional coaches, it would probably be Popovich. All right, at San Antonio, 19 years head coach of the Spurs, and you know, I think most people think he does a wonderful job, his teamwork and everything else, you know, exemplary, everything like that. And then if you say to college, who would you pick? Krzyzewski? Well, probably. I mean, he's an Olympic coach. He's you know, and everything else. Isn't it interesting that Krzyzewski graduated from West Point and Popovich graduated from the Air Force Academy? The two best coaches happen to have military backgrounds, okay? I asked Popovich about it. He said, I learned a lot of my teaching techniques and my ability to communicate, the communication skills at the Air Force Academy, all right? And so, you know, it's interesting that would be the case. I really believe that in any teaching situation, and that's what sports are about, whether you're on the football field or whatever it is, it starts with discipline. And the same thing in the classroom. You can't be a teacher, you can't teach history if you've got chaos in your classroom, all right? You know, you've got to have some kind of order, and that's what these men had learned and how they accomplished their goals by doing that. So here's me. Now, I grew up, all right, the end of the Depression. All right, I was born in 1932. The end of the Depression, going into the World War II, the war that would end all wars. So neighbors were going off to war, you know, and you were getting a star in your window that you had a boy or two boys or whatever it was, you know. The people in our block, the Coopers, the thing, you know, the Rooneys, their children are going off to war, and they would see them once in a while in their uniform. We were so proud of them. Believe it or not, we had blackout shades in Brooklyn. For some reason, we thought Germany was going to bomb Brooklyn.
Submarines off the coast,
yeah,
Coach.
Yeah, the submarines off the coast, and the threat was probably real.
But Brooklyn?
And Brooklyn, you know, even in Brooklyn, if they come in, we would have killed them.
Sure. Yeah, right.
Huh? You think the gallows would have let them fool around on that? We had guys tougher than them. I mean, but anyway, yeah. And so, you know, and there was a lot of, I think we had a large German population who had mixed emotions about Germany. And then, you know, and it's fascinating as your life goes on, you say, how could you have a Holocaust in a place like Germany? It was not a third world country. You know, this was, you know, it's always puzzled me how that could have happened.
And they were Lutherans and Catholics.
Yeah, Lutherans and Catholics. And of course, the Italian people, a lot of the times, it never changes, is, you know, the reparations after World War I were too tough. And we didn't allow, you know, that's one thing about General MacArthur. He was a statesman as well as you know, he knew how to take care of Japan. You know, we dropped the atomic bomb on them and we wipe them out, and then they tried to rebuild them, you know, and so that they wouldn't come back to war again, you know, and so and instead they become an ally, and so, you know, here we are. I'm growing up during World War II, baseball cards. We had war cards.
Oh, I didn't know.
All right,
that.
yeah, we said that guys are stabbing Japanese with a bayonet and stuff like that, and cards, with trading cards. Terrible. And war movies, all right. And of course, you know, we always remember James Cagney, you know, George M. Cohen, and the war songs.
The Fighting 69.
The Fighting 69th. I mean, you know,
is that your guys?
Duffy, Father Duffy had the statue of him in Times Square. So, you know, we got to know those guys, and then the war was over, all right, and the draft was over. Guys were drafted. They volunteered, of course, after Pearl Harbor, and so very similar to the attack on the towers.
Yes.
People feel a sense of got to go help somehow, like the guy Tillman here, the great football player. You know, gives up everything to go it. You know, we still have those people in America. They're still here, you know. They're not serving in Congress, but they're here, you know. And so, you know, anyway, what happens is these people, you know. So here I am. I'm getting out of high school. All right. The draft is reinstituted because don't forget we're now going into Korea.
Sure, Coach. Let's hold that thought for one second. We'll pick you up after the draft. You're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour with legend Frank Layden, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in their life. I'm no different. Hey, everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce. I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strong about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552 or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
If you or someone you know is looking for a new job or career, you need to visit the pros. National Career Fairs at ncfairs.com. National Career Fairs hosts over 300 career fairs a year nationwide. The events are free and give you the perfect chance to meet some of the top employers in your area face to face. To find the nearest career fair to you, visit ncfairs.com. Again, that's ncfairs.com. What are you waiting for?
Veterans served us, now it's time we serve them. As a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as a current military member deployed abroad, I would like to take a minute of your time to tell you about Patriot Hills of New York. Patriot Hills of New York is a nonprofit organization providing support to veterans and their families. They partner veterans in need with over 65 health and wellness organizations, community groups, as well as philanthropic foundations providing no or low-cost services. They've helped over 400 veterans through confidential referral services, assistance with veterans issues, employment placement, as well as educational opportunities. If you need assistance or just want to help veterans by donating your time or services, contact them at info@patriothills.org. Again, that's info@patriothills.org. Visit patriothillsofnewyork.com for more information about their services or how you can donate. Our veterans deserve no less. We can give it to them, and you can help.
You're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour on the Vets On Media Network.
We're back with Coach Frank Layden of the Utah Jazz and Niagara University. Coach, let's get back to World War II and the end of World War II, and you going to Niagara.
Yeah, the end of World War II, was just about the time that I was realizing, I was a youngster when Pearl Harbor was bombed. 5 years later, four and a half years later, the troops were coming home, and they were greeted. They were welcomed. That was the greatest generation.
Sure.
They stepped up and they didn't, they were fighting on every front. There were Americans everywhere giving their lives, and the world appreciated the free world. And so anyway, now the draft is interesting because we got involved in Korea and the fear of China and what have you, and the war and the arguments between our generals and President Truman and everything else. So it went on and on. And we started something that we haven't been able to stop since. It's unfortunate. Probably if going back in my history time, if Jimmy Carter had taken a greater stand in the Iranian hostage situation, and said, let them go by Friday or else there'll be no more Iran. There'll be nothing left. It would have sent out a message that we would be willing to sacrifice, but it never changed, and we just went downhill ever since. But anyway, the opportunity in my senior year, a couple of things happened. First of all, the teachers of New York City school system, they can't strike, but they don't have to do the extracurricular activities. So all extracurricular activities, including Barbara, my wife, who was a senior at the same time I was, there was no prom, there was no school paper, there was no sports, blank. For a year and a half, there was nothing in the New York City schools. So we went to the boys' clubs. I always loved the boys' clubs because they gave us an opportunity to play sports, play in CYO. We played baseball and basketball, and gave us an opportunity. Yeah, the Catholic youth organizations, and the boys' club was wonderful. I
know our great Bob Lanier attributes his success to the boys.
Yeah, the Flatbush Boys Club was wonderful, and Of course, Bob was from up in the Buffalo area.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did the same thing. Well, anyway, now at the same time, I wanted to go to LIU, where I could have stayed for my room and board and give the check at home and stay home and be with my friends.
Sure.
It's just tough to leave your friends in Brooklyn. A lot of guys say, you'll never leave. You'll stay in Brooklyn all your life. But however, all of a sudden they fixed the games.
The New York City schools, New York City colleges.
New York colleges,
Yeah.
LIU and NYU and CCNY, CCNY was so good they won the NIT and the NCAA in the same year. And not only did they win, they could name the score.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot of friends that got caught up in that and used to play with them in the summers. Of course, you mentioned the Catskills was what we call the Jewish Alps. There was a lot of betting going on
Sure.
in the games and a lot of slipping of cash to the players and what have you at some of the, big, like Grossman's and these different big hotels that ran basketball at night. And a lot of
Grossinger's,
great
yeah.
players went there. Connie Hawkins was there and
Yeah.
Wilt Chamberlain and so many great players would go up there and have a vacation and play sports. Well, anyway, one thing led to another. The LIU fell and they dropped sports, and the great Claire B., who I admired so much, I wanted to play for him, was gone. I could play baseball there. And so what was left was looking around. I tried to get into St. John's. They were filled up and everything. And one of the people there said, why don't you try Niagara? They play in the Garden. They got a lot of New Yorker alumni there and stuff. So I ended up going to Niagara. Now, unbeknownst to me, Niagara is what they call a land-grant school. And it meant that everybody who went there, I don't think that's the case now, but the land was given by the government and everybody that went there had to serve in the ROTC. Okay, now the ROTC was good because it was a reserve unit. You were no longer eligible for the draft, which 18, 19 years old, you get out of college.
So that was the same in Vietnam and Bonaventure also had the mandatory
they had
ROTC.
the mandatory ROTC. 2 years you had to go. And then at the end of 2 years, the Army selected you and you selected whether you wanted to go on. So some of my classmates chose not to, betting that the draft would be gone by the time they got out of school or the Vietnam War would be over, what have you. But, I saw it as an opportunity. First of all, you got paid. We got a stipend
Sure.
for being in there. It wasn't a lot of money, but it paid for my school ring, which I still have. And it was some spending money, which I didn't get, for my family. They didn't have it to send to me. So, and it was a camaraderie there. I kind of liked it. And I was in Scabbard and Blade, which was kind of a little honor society in it. And I found that if I've got to go, why not go as an officer? Never realizing that once I did go, that it extended my education tremendously. And we were talking about this, Dave and I and you, Joe, before, is that when the student gets out of school, he's unfinished. He's never been challenged. I mean, all right, he can go on to graduate school, take law exams, all these things, but he's never had a sense of responsibility. Bingo, bango, bongo, you get in the Army, and you're a second lieutenant, and 18 months later, you're going to be a first lieutenant, whether you like it or not. The next thing, you're in charge, and they're giving you a sense of responsibility and a chance to command and to teach and to gain a sense of responsibility that overnight, it's something. When the flag comes down at night, a retreat.
Sure, I love that
To
stuff.
pull over and salute, you know what I mean? And to do it and be proud to do it, so you get a sense. I remember when Barb and I were dating and she came over to see a parade and saw
Is this Fort Monmouth?
front, at Fort Monmouth, leading the company in a parade and stuff and saying, how proud she was. And my father was just, taken back by it all. And, the pomp and circumstance of it all was so important. But the fact that they trusted you, when I got out of the Army, I really meant this, not only my Niagara education, which I was a typical C student or what have you. I remember Al McGuire saying that the C students run the world, so don't worry about it, But the thing is
They let me in.
that it was being that I felt I could tackle anything. I had been in charge, of a company of 750 men, the headquarters company. I had vehicles, I had weapons, I had things that were
Carrier pigeons.
Okay, we had by the way, you kid about that, but
No, I'm not
we
kidding.
had messenger dogs, we had carrier pigeons, we had a museum in Fort Monmouth just carrying over. G.I. Joe was the most famous pigeon that carried thing. Usually they give two pigeons, send them out with the messages. You can have, the best thing would be for a man to carry a message over wire. We didn't have cell phones and things that we have now. There was very little wireless. And as you know, Joe, you were a forward observer. You knew what it was like to string wire and to send men into really harm's way in order to have communication. So a lot was learned, a lot of responsibility was taken upon itself, to where I have always been somebody who felt that our students are being somewhat cheated. I think we would serve ourselves very well by having universal military training.
My buddy Steve Banco from Buffalo reminded me what athletics did for us. As much as athletics builds character, and when we got in the military, those of us who were athletes before going in the military had a sense of this was normal, right? You wear a uniform.
Yeah, there was very little transition.
No, you have an enemy
and training.
And we were disciplined, and I remember
and-
all my coaches. The training was part of it,
Yeah.
and we were better soldiers as a result of being in athletics.
Pete Carrillo is the great coach and a veteran himself. Went to college after he was in the service. I think Pete was a Marine. The thing he said was very interesting, and it's a lesson that has to be learned today through sports. We're going to take sports into athletics and everything. Is that if losing develops character, and there is something to that, you know what I mean? And in this country, we have to be very careful. If losing develops character, winning reveals it. And we have in this country, unfortunately, the celebration, after touchdowns, the example of "look at me," it's too bad that it's not the individual, it's the team.
Sure.
That really comes forward. With Johnny Wooden, the great coach, or Morgan Wu, coach at DeMatha High School, and Johnny Wooden at UCLA. It was always about the team and not about the individual that made winning successful.
And that's what I loved about your teams when you were coaching the Jazz, and I love the Celtics because it was about team. And
it was about team. I mean, we all had roles.
Yes.
And in my role was to be the father, and that's to win properly and to lose properly. I mean, you don't always win. That's the way life is. There's no room for sore losers, and there's no room for the heroics of always winning either.
One story you told about Dennis Rodman. I'd rather.
I told people that I don't know Dennis Rodman. I hope his life is going along okay now and everything, but his antics while playing, I said I'd rather lose than have him on our team.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a little harsh. Maybe that was a little. I really think back that maybe not knowing him, maybe as a person, I would have seen. I think that early in his life, someone should have taken him into control because he had God-given talent.
Sure.
Let's face it, he's a Hall of Fame talent, but not a good example to our young people.
Sure. And I see that in the NBA today, and it kind of turns some of these athletes on different teams.
It's too bad, and they're very visible now, of course,
Sure.
with the TV. When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, we didn't have TV, so when you talked about Joe DiMaggio, you had to see him in person.
Sure.
He wasn't he was on TV every day. You kind of get used to it.
Or Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson, I was at his first game, and I remember.
And he was an Army lieutenant, as it turns out.
Yes, he was, and it was a lot of people don't realize that Happy Chandler, who was the commissioner of baseball, that after the Dodgers had signed, Branch Rickey had signed Jackie Robinson, and assigned him to Montreal. The major leagues actually met. There were 16 teams then over the winter, and had decided that they would vote as to whether they were going to allow Jackie Robinson to play. And Happy Chandler, who had been a former governor of Kentucky and a Southerner, the teams voted 15-1 against allowing Jackie Robinson to play in the major leagues. 15-1. He overrode them. And this, again, is a great lesson. I mention it often that, you know, it's somebody, you have an opportunity in your life to maybe do something great. Happy Chandler had that one moment to make that decision, and he had the right as the commissioner for the good of baseball to override whatever the owners did. And he did that. He already said he can play because he was college man, served our country. He says we cannot prevent him from playing. The fallout of Jackie Robinson playing had a big effect on the Negro leagues. You know, they came apart because following Jackie Robinson, all the great players then signed to the big leagues, you know.
And that changed baseball.
And it changed, it changed baseball. Well, it was America. This was another step. I mean, you know, you look at Jackie Robinson, he didn't just open the doors to baseball. He opened the doors to women. He opened the doors to those the disabled. I mean, you know, that was the beginning of the conscience of the United States. And it's exactly what we have to look at ourselves today. I mean, I cry when I see some of our politicians turning their backs on the immigrants. People who those people don't want to come into this country because the weather's better, you know. I mean, you know, so now I do a lot of public speaking and a lot of motivational speaking. I always start off by, all right, I want everybody here who's a Native American to stand. And occasionally, if you've got a big enough crowd, 500 people or something, some guy will stand. I'll say, all right, what tribe are you with? The Apaches or something. Oh, good. Yeah, great warriors, you know, and the Iroquois, okay, upstate New York. And they're fine, you know. So the rest of you are all products of immigration. Now, isn't it very fortunate that your parents weren't kept from coming in here? Because the next person we let in may have the child who will cure cancer. Or what have you, you know?
And they could do it in this country.
Well, we're losing our this country was very generous. You know, we always were giving. We always, if there were storms or starvation, we were there, and we felt good about it. And that's all right to feel good about when you do good things. But we also should have a sense of responsibility. I don't know. I look in my refrigerator and it's full. I got something for these people. I mean, I got room in my house. I got room in my neighborhood. What, you know, I was better off growing up in Brooklyn because everybody I grew up in an apartment house at 60 families. And, you know, as Robin Williams said, this is a great country because everybody lives here from somewhere else, you know? Yeah. And I remember across the way, Georgie was the Greek kid, you know, we used to walk to school together. And when we were going out, you know, you know, my sister would say to me, Frankie, you know, have you got your lunch? You know, and Georgie's mother always used to say, you got your homework. You know, in the Irish, you know, but you know, so yeah, so I'd like to see us loosen up a little bit, and you know, I think that sports can be out of control somewhat too when we see the price of the tickets, the payrolls, the coaches' salaries, and everything else. I think we've got to get back to reality somewhat and use sports about what it was as part of the academic.
But they're cutting it. We're cutting these great programs for our students. You know. It's a shame to see this budget being cut, and
yeah, well, it's you know, you need great leadership at the top, you know, and
that's college
presidents have to step up and run their colleges and not let the alumni do it or the booster clubs and stuff like that, you know. And I think the military academies do it right. I mean, everybody plays. And they play hard and they what have you.
They do play hard.
Yeah, they do. You watch the Army-Navy game, those kids play their hearts out and the students are excited and everything. And that's what sports are about. It's not to create just of course, betting has a lot to do with it. You see the you know, you said March Madness. March Madness is brought about by ESPN and promoted by people with the brackets and betting and stuff like that. So, Anyway,
We got a president who understands the brackets.
Yes, he does, and then we got a president that understands a lot of things. You know, he's a good man, and I think he, under the most trying circumstances any president ever had, probably outside of Abraham Lincoln, you know, was just does a wonderful job. He's
Sure. I think the story after he gets out about all the obstacles he's had to overcome and the racism and the hate groups and the.
I got to work on his left-hand shot, though. You know, he
never would have made it to Niagara, right?
No. Well,
you know, when he recruited him out of Penaho.
Well, I could have made a good defensive guy out of him. You know, that was one thing. I was up at Niagara. I was with Calvin Murphy.
Yeah.
And he said, "Gee, if Layden coached me any longer," he said, "I would have been averaging 10 points a game." I was trying to make him a passer when he was averaging 50 points a game. You know,
good coaching.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We you know, we were just talking about Bob Churchwell. I understand he's listening, one of my ex-players, and Bob was a tough guy, and he was a great rebounder and a hard worker. And I used to say to him, "You want shots? Go get the ball. Go rebound."
Sure. Hey, we're going to take a short break now, and Bob, stay tuned. You're going to be able to call in. I think we'll take some calls when we come back from a break. You're listening to Coach Layden in the Veterans Heritage Hour.
Veterans served us, now it's time we serve them. As a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as a current military member deployed abroad, I would like to take a minute of your time to tell you about Patriot Hills of New York. Patriot Hills of New York is a nonprofit organization providing support veterans and their families. They partner veterans in need with over 65 health and wellness organizations, community groups, as well as philanthropic foundations providing no or low-cost services. They've helped over 400 veterans through confidential referral services, assistance with veterans issues, employment placement, as well as educational opportunities. If you need assistance or just want to help veterans by donating your time or services, contact them at info@patriothills.org. Again, that's info@patriothills.org. Visit patriothillsofnewyork.com for more information about their services or how you can donate. Our veterans deserve no less. We can give it to them, and you can help. Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in their life. I'm no different. Hey, everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce, I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strong about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552. Or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
If you or someone you know is looking for a new job or career, you need to visit the pros. National Career Fairs at ncfairs.com. National Career Fairs hosts over 300 career fairs a year nationwide. The events are free and give you the perfect chance to meet some of the top employers in your area face-to-face. To find the nearest career fair to you, visit ncfairs.com. Again, that's ncfairs.com. What are you waiting for?
You're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour on the Vets On Media Network.
Hey, this is David Lucero and Joe Brett. We're back with the legendary Coach Frank Layden of the Niagara Purple Eagles. Coach, when I first saw you, I was playing baseball for St. Bonaventure, and it may have been against Niagara, I don't know, but you were there in a golf cart coming down past where the Riley Center is now, our basketball place, and you were there in a golf cart looking at us play baseball.
Yeah.
And this is a significant year for Niagara baseball. And
this is a significant year because, you know, we've had some heroes before. There was a Marine by the name of Terzi, who a dorm was named after him many years ago, who was a guy who in World War II stayed all night on top of a Japanese tank. And the next morning when they opened the top, he threw a grenade in and blew up the tank and blew himself up also, you know. And then there also was a Wild Bill Donovan, General Wild Bill Donovan.
Medal of Honor winner.
Yes, he was a graduate
World
of
War
Niagara.
One.
And he started Wild Bill Donovan started the OSS. Yeah. And
A South Buffalo boy. We got to get the South
yes, he is.
Buffalo Irish in
South
there.
Buffalo, and of course, in the terms of baseball, Joe McCarthy was a graduate of Niagara, as McGraw.
John McGraw was a coach at St.
graduate.
Bonaventure.
Yes.
He coached the New York Giants, and
Yeah.
Joe McCarthy, a graduate of Niagara, coached the New York Yankees.
And McCarthy eventually got his degree, I think, from Columbia. And so, we've talked about putting some kind of a statue up about him, but we do have a more recent, the 50th anniversary of a fellow by the name of John Bobo, who's a lieutenant in the Marines and was a heroic warrior in the Vietnam War. This 50th anniversary of his graduation from Niagara. And anyway,
the team is wearing camouflage
they're
hats.
wearing camouflage hats in his honor, and the baseball field had quite a while ago was called Bobo Field, and he's a local boy who also played baseball, but they are rejuvenating the field. It's going to be rebuilt, and right on campus, it's going to be a beautiful.
And he was a Medal
baseball
of Honor
field.
recipient.
He was a Medal of Honor recipient.
Coach, we got a breaking. We got national security. Our national security officer here says our lines have been tapped, and there's some purple eagle on the telephone here who wants to break in and say something. Are you still out there, Bob?
Yes, I am. Hey, Coach.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Man, I'm doing fine, man. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, and I was mentioning to these fellows during the break here that you were the best rebounder that I ever had. I'm saying, and I'm putting you right next to Karl Malone. Okay,
Ooh.
you were some tough rebounder, and a very good player, and a very good guy. I know you gave it everything you had every single game, and I was so happy to see your son playing at Georgetown. And how's he doing?
Robert's doing wonderful. He spent a couple of years in the CBA, was at Golden State for a short period, and went overseas for about 7 years.
Good.
And now he's coaching high school basketball.
Good.
Coached in Georgia for a few years. Now he's in Virginia at Benedictine College Prep. 2 years ago, in his first year there, he won the Division I state championship.
Well, great. And let me ask you, what are you doing, Bob?
I've been in the insurance business, have an operation called Employee Benefit Advocates, and we design and implement employee benefits programs.
Great.
Let me just say this, Coach. Let me just say first, I just want to get my hats off and honor the vets, the veterans that do so much for our country and for the world. Back in, I was at Niagara, I got my papers to go over for my physical, and I got this reclassified 1Y. You may not know this, Coach, but my father was a staff sergeant at 25th Infantry, and he died from service-connected injuries when I was 8.5 months old.
Oh, Bob,
So
that's
I
too
never
bad.
knew, but by his virtue and the things that he did, and unfortunately, I didn't have to go. And just want to say hats off and just get a bit of history. But and I just want to say, Coach, I'm trying to figure out why and how we're going to get that 1970 first NCAA team from Niagara, who actually won in the first round, into the Niagara University Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get in this deceased, in this posthumous Wayne Jones and Mike Samuel inducted, and I can't get any response.
Okay. I'll look into it. I will. I'll follow up on that.
Well, I got a solution, Bob. Why don't you come down to St. Bonaventure? We'll have Bob Lanier and the guys who actually went to the Final Four in 1970. We'll help you guys see how to talk to Niagara and get into the Hall of
They
Fame.
were in that tournament. Yeah. And you know what? People don't realize that we started out in the Sweet 16.
I know.
We upset Penn in the play-in game at which was probably the greatest victory in Niagara history. Maybe we could pick out a Canisius victory or a Bonnie victory along the way. But
Well,
it was
beating
a great win.
Canisius was always
But this guy that we're talking to now, Bob Churchill, he was a warrior. He was a tough guy and did a good student and a good guy,
Sure.
which is important. I'm glad he's successful and his son's successful and life goes on.
Well, great. Listen, Bob, we're going to let you go if that's okay, and return with a coach.
I'm gonna look into that though, Bob. Yeah, by all means.
And the
That's a
Bonnies
good
were there.
question.
You know, Coach, you just
No.
got into the Hall of Fame. You had a big deal. The court's named after you at Niagara University. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
And I saw that on YouTube.
Yeah,
Mike Ranella, your dear
yeah,
friend of mine,
yeah.
sent it to me. But Calvin Murphy was there.
Yeah.
And the Bonaventure coaches, your adversary,
Yeah.
Larry Weiss,
He was there.
Sasson,
Bob
showed
Sassone got a nice letter from Jimmy Sadlin and
my old roommate,
and
coach of the Bonnies.
Sassone is interesting because he coached at Bonnie's, but we played against each other in high school.
I know, in
He
Brooklyn.
went to Lincoln and
Yeah.
I went to Fort Hamilton. We
Wow.
played against each other. He was a much better player than I was, but
And a smart guy.
a very smart guy. Yeah,
And a history teacher as well. He helped
Yes.
me brief before I was interviewing for a job going to Yugoslavia. I didn't get it, but he
Yeah.
gave me 5 minutes of his best stuff, and at least I waffled through the interview, right?
yeah. Well, you know, and so it was a great rivalry with Canisius, Niagara, and St. Barnabas, Little Three, we used to call it. And
Still do. I love
Yeah.
Little
Now-
Three. I love the Western New York. I love everything about it, including this man sitting across from me.
And I mentioned, you know, and Bob touched on it a little bit, is that the idea, you know, the Greeks told us years ago that if we were truly to be a democracy, we would have to take care of our youngsters, have to educate them, take care of their health. We have to take care of our elderly. We can't box them and you know, put them in warehouses. No, we have to take a thing from our Asian neighbors and take care of our elderly, and of course we have to take care of our warriors. You know, the idea that when we were growing up that everybody knew who General Eisenhower was and General MacArthur, and I think you know, we'd be hard pressed to ask somebody on the street now who any of our leading generals are.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't our admirals or something. We all
And they
know.
do an excellent job, but they're unheralded and unheard of. And we just had a 3-star General David Friedovich, a Green Beret,
Yeah.
on last month. So we're hoping to get more of this
Well,
conversation going.
Yeah, and they get there, and I think we have to have these kind of guys have to be seen as our heroes too.
Sure.
And we never can stop recognizing. I think it's wonderful that teams wear camouflage stuff, or that they let you know, veterans in. And here in the ball games, I go there, they ask veterans to stand up and take a bow at the ball games with the
Far cry from when we came home from Vietnam. Eh,
Sure.
Joe?
yeah, and that's a terrible thing. You know, that's a blot, but we can learn by that. By the way,
You would think
Absolutely.
we had
Yeah.
learned, and David and I have started this show because you would think we had learned that, and
Yeah.
yet we're still fighting the same issues. You mentioned something about the poorest of the poor are the ones who join the army now.
Yeah,
What was-
yeah, and we have to make it attractive, and also when the warriors come home, we have to take care of those people who are wounded. They don't need just help; they need education. They need continuing help. They need good hospitalization. We can never put them on the back
How
burner.
have we done this though? How have we stooped?
I think the 3 legs are education, good jobs, and a high level of wellness.
Yes,
Those
without-
are the 3 legs of success.
And those are the things you've been fighting for, David, on every
Yeah,
commission
yeah,
and every
and-
committee
and-
that you're involved
and I
with.
can't think of anybody that we could do it for than our service people.
I
And
can't
that's you know, a simple thing. When I see a serviceman, I always say to him, you know, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And they look at me sometimes, and I say, hey, thanks.
I do
Good
too.
job, you know, something like that, you know. And so,
Coach, we
Life
can't
has
thank
been
you.
good.
Life has been good, and everybody who's been around you has felt better for the process and for the experience.
let me say this, you know, you can have shows like this. We can talk about these things, and we can think in terms of it being negative. But you know what? This country is still great.
Sure.
It's a great. We're blessed with the ecology here, and we're blessed with great minds, and we still have wonderful, wonderful people. They're out there, but now we've got to hear from them.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And that's why you're here, Coach, to lead us all out of here. Well, I'm wearing my purple shirt today. For all you Purple Eagle fans and Niagara fans, thank you for turning in. Next week, David, we have Joanna Sweat.
Joanna Sweat and a young man by the name of Peter Lucier,
You're
my nephew,
who
who
was
is a Marine, an Afghanistan combat veteran, and now goes to school at St. Louis University and writes words of wisdom in Tom Ricks's blog, foreignpolicy.com.
and we've had Tom Ricks. We've had an interview that he's stored away somewhere in our archives. We just met him. But Joanna Sweat is a veterans advocate for the Pat Tillman Center. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned to the Veterans Heritage Hour. And thanks for hanging in there with us. And thank you, Coach Layden, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Roger that.
See you next
later,
week,
David.
Joe.
What's so proudly